Hey everybody, welcome back to Your Full Crew. I'm Don Zoldi, one of your co-hosts.
Hey, and I'm Mike Peel, your other co-host, and we've got some great articles we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about Boston Dynamics' lawsuit against Ghost Robotics. We're going to be talking about, oh my God, I forgot the second article.
You don't have to go in order, Mike. We know we're talking also
About
about
autonomous
abattoirs in Japan,
Yeah.
convenience stores.
Yes, that's the second article. My apologies. We're going to be talking about autonomous vehicles making it onto the threat list, and please stay tuned to the end because we're going to be playing around with Chat GPT-3 live. So it's a revolutionary type of AI writing assistant and coding assistant. So we're going to check that out at the end, and we've got some amazing guests to talk about these topics. Honestly, this is action-packed today. We're going to start with our first guest, Karen DiMeo. Karen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Mike and Don and Kimberly. It's great to be here today. I really appreciate you having me on as a guest. I'm the CEO and founder of AERODiMEO, which is a consulting company. I advise clients on issues related to uncrewed and advanced emerging technologies in the aviation industry. I work mostly with companies and clients in the drone space. It includes operators and manufacturers, related technology and robotics. And I've been in aviation for 30 years, part of it as working with the federal government as FAA, part of the regulatory branch of aviation, and then also in commercial industry. I focus, my early years was focused on research and early strategy integration of drones into the airspace for the military and commercial. But today I help my clients kind of bridge the gap between their fast-paced technology advancements and the much slower-paced regulatory and policy needs of the industry. So I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you.
And she forgot to say that she's the 2021 Women to Watch Women in Drones Leadership Award recipient. That was Saberwing, I think, Saberwing
Yes.
aircraft sponsored that award. So
Yes, thank you, Dawn. My reign's almost over. We're about to
handing the crown soon.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm proud to have known Karen for over half a decade now. So, Ramon Roche is in the chat. Say hi to Ramon. And actually, we've got a mutual friend as our second guest today, Kimberly McGuire. So, Kimberly, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, first of all, thank you for inviting me. And yeah, I'm Kimberly. I'm a robotics engineer at Bitcraze. It's a small company in Sweden which makes the small quadcopter called the Crazy Fly.
Right here. So cool.
So yeah, I'm actually from the Netherlands myself. I followed my studies there all the way up to my PhD at the Technical University of Delft. And I got my PhD on the topic of swarm exploration with pocket-sized drones, like the Crazy Fly. Yeah, so that's in my free time. I love food and traveling. I do quite some video gaming as well. In terms of traveling, I love Japan. Anything about Japan. That's also where I met Mike at Roscon. So, and then one thing led to another, and now I'm here. So I'm very glad to be here.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about Japan later. So lots of coincidences today. I'm truly excited. But the first article is actually from you, Kim, about Boston Dynamics suing Ghost Robotics.
Yeah,
so what's going on here?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting article. It's, I think, already a couple of weeks old, so it's not the newest news out there. But I think because it's still generated quite a lot of discussions within the community, so that's why I would like to put it forward. So I actually noticed that it's in the weekly robotics newsletter Slack, and that's kind of why I started talking about it. And Boston Dynamics it's already like quite long out there, so they're really known for the robot Spot, Big Dog, Atlas. You probably already know the viral videos that they sometimes bring out. So and Ghost Robotics is a smaller company, a little bit newer, and they make robots like the Spot, like on the picture right there. So they kind of look similar. So Boston Dynamics is suing Ghost Robotics for the design, and in the article they actually list a couple of patents over there, which I'm not a patent lawyer myself. I'm in no position to evaluate it, but I have heard some stories that they might be just a little bit too generic for the design. But still, I'm not the expert here. Interesting thing actually is there's already some quadruple robot companies out there, but they decided to sue Ghost Robotics, and Ghost Robotics has gone viral a while ago by putting a gun on a one of their robots and posting a video about it. So there was a lot of talk about that, and people are against that. And Boston Dynamics have been co-signing a letter together with Open Robotics, Unit 3, which is another one, like a similar robot design they also design, and I think Anabotics and a couple of other ones, to be against the weaponization of robotics in general. Don't put weapons on robots, they don't want that. So they're kind of like, maybe that's not really the reason why the patent design was maybe not necessarily the reason why they sued Ghost Robotics, but perhaps it's because of their viral video where they put a gun on a Ghost Robotic platform. So, yeah, that's kind of the background.
Selective lawsuit is what you're saying, or at least saying is a possibility. Dawn, you wanted to say something?
No, I want Kimberly to finish her thought, and then I wanted to jump in real quick.
Of course, yeah. I think that's pretty much all I can say. So, of course, the article itself is about the lawsuits, but it's more of I'm just kind of trying to connect the dots a little bit together. So perhaps not completely about the patents, but actually about the fact that Boston Dynamics is against weaponization.
Well, I'm sure that no pun intended, in a way, added fuel to the fire. But yeah, so let's talk. So we talked about that a couple of full crews ago. That open letter and the fact Ghost Robotics sells almost exclusively to the military. So putting a weapon on that can make sense. I mean, look, we've been weaponizing drones forever. They're robots. But what I found interesting, there's a long history here. So this wasn't just a lawsuit out of nowhere. There were multiple, basically notifications, if you will, that Boston Dynamics gave to Ghost Robotics. Let's see. First of all, there was kind of an initial letter where they sent, saying, hey, you should review our patents. You should make sure you're not infringing. And then they sent kind of a specific notification letter for the patent infringement before filing the lawsuit. I think some of that's prerequisite to filing the lawsuit, but all of this predates that open letter. I think that open letter, that like I said, I think that's connecting the dots. I think that's even more reason for Boston Dynamics maybe to have some animosity with Ghost Robotics. But lots of, to your point, Kimberly, lots of interesting things for the IP we're talking about here. So it was robotically negotiating stairs was one of the patents.
Right, I saw that one. That felt like kind of like thin, like just put it out there, see if they'll rubber stamp it.
Yeah, like a perception and fitting for a stair track, or like screw actuator for a legged robot ×2. There were 2 patents about that. So really interesting because Ghost Robotics fired back. And they kind of use the same language, almost like, oh, they've been watching us, and they've decided to, sue us. Ghost Robotics was formed. So first of all, Boston Dynamics was formed by an MIT. It was a spinoff of an MIT project. Yes. And they've been going for, like you said, making all these robots for 20 years. Just released the Spot in 2020. Ghost Robotics came about conversely in 2015. Founded by the PhD research of a University of Pennsylvania professor, so another prestigious, Ivy League school in this case, and they had filed a patent for a battery-powered dynamic legged robot called the RHEX, which was filed and received, it was received in 2001. So how this is going to play out, I don't know, but we're seeing this a lot in technology where companies have similar products, and then the lawsuits are flowing like we see Archer and Whisk. I know Karen's familiar with that as well. So Karen, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not an attorney either, but I found it really fascinating, and I feel like maybe we're starting to, it's the beginning of a trend that we might see in the drone space and, in the eVTOL space. Mostly the, litigious activities have been the industry versus sort of the government or, entities as we're trying to build the space up. But I certainly see it evolving into, something like this where, all right, once we start, being able to move companies out to scale, and the economy starts getting infiltrated with these technologies, we're going to see the industry turning on itself and, start suing each other. I remember when I was in the FAA back in the early days of the drone work, it was just fascinating to me that before there were really any commercial operations, we started seeing these, dozens and dozens of patents being filed by, some of the bigger drone companies, and they were all ideas, right? We hadn't seen any of it. And, in the aviation world, it really was kind of an anomaly because we didn't see things like that. So I think it's, a sign of the times to come. It's the first of many. I do work with a client that, works with Boston Dynamics because drones and robotics are starting to go hand in hand too. And, it's concerning, like, what impact is this going to have going forward? We certainly don't want innovation to slow down or stall anymore. We want companies to thrive, but, I get it. Intellectual property is important. It's the core of business. So, I think it's just going to be fascinating to watch it roll out, and I'm just thankful that I'm not a patent attorney in this day and age.
Well, hey, it's job security for patent attorneys. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, like you both had noticed, Kim and Dawn, that I felt like there was a little bit of like, just see if we could patent it type of behavior. And sometimes those patents don't hold in an actual situation like this. In terms of the rivalry, I think that's going to persist even past this lawsuit, no matter who wins, unless the lawsuit is absolutely crippling to Ghost in the end. But ultimately, Spot and Spot-like robots are everywhere at this point. I don't know if this lawsuit will actually have a huge kind of effect on the overall products you will see in the world in the next 5 years, unless it's a clearly decisive victory on something absolutely critical to the Spot design, rather than one of these little hinges, literally in some cases, right? So those could be easily changed with a different type of thing, right? Or you could figure out another way around skinning that cat. So that's what I think. I don't think this will ultimately stop innovation, but it might put a dent in Ghost if it goes in Boston's favor.
I'm cracking up because you're talking about skinning cats and we're talking about robotic dogs. But yeah, hey.
More than one way to skin a robotic dog.
There you go.
A new phrase.
Yeah. I don't know how much time we have left on this, but I guess we have.
You could get a closing thought in.
Closing thought, please.
Yeah, I guess like I'm mostly curious like how it's going to end up. Like weaponization of robots, it is a very hot topic at this moment. San Francisco just passed a law that they allow that actually.
Yes.
So that would have been also an interesting one.
Police.
I'm just curious also how it's going to affect like Anabotics and Unitree, the two other companies that I've mentioned, but. I did see like a LinkedIn post of one of the head people of Anabotics that they're not worried, or at least like not necessarily currently worried about Boston Dynamics suing them because they're on this same open letter. They have the same values, but technically, if you just look at patents alone, they could.
Yeah, so, values aside, that's nice, but business is business. Even if I'm buddies with somebody, if they're stealing my IP. I'm gonna
Yeah,
have an issue.
and
Yeah.
doesn't that hurt their argument against Ghost if they're unwilling to sue other parties that are infringing? Or is that a separate
Yeah,
issue?
I would think so. Either
Yeah.
you enforce it universally or you don't. You can't have selective enforcement.
Yeah, that's one of the things
Yeah,
about
and
lawsuits. You
perhaps they
sue
should have.
everybody.
Oh,
What? No, you go, Kim.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think like perhaps the patent lawsuit is maybe not the best way to kind of point towards Ghost Robotics. Hey, don't put a gun on your robots. Like we don't like that. Perhaps there's another way then to sue them. Let's say.
Yeah.
But yeah. But anyway, yeah. That's all I have to say about it. So. Yeah.
Well, thank you for the
Interesting
article.
stuff.
It was awesome, and I knew when you picked it, Dawn was gonna jump in as the first talker. She's really good with the lawsuit stuff, and that's this has been a
I've
topic that's
noticed.
been evolving in our discussion here on the crew. So I want to thank Karen for bringing me back to Japan for a minute with this Lawson's article. So just a brief kind of interlude. For people who don't know, Lawson's is like a 7-Eleven, but it's a little bit more hipster or in Japan. Actually, our first convenience store experience, me and Ramon, was at Lawson's down the street, and it was extremely convenient. That's what I'll say. So what's going on here, Karen? How are they improving?
That's really interesting. Actually, Mike, I saw from one of the previous folk crew that you had recently been in Japan, but I didn't know that's where you met Kimberly. So it was kind of fun for me to pull this one up because I'm so over-absorbed in drone, reading drone articles on a daily basis. I thought it'd be fun to take a look at another service industry that's using high tech to solve like everyday problems and cutting edge problems. And so while it might seem sort of benign, I think the whole idea behind what this article is about could be really helpful to us as humanity, thinking about how we're going to start meshing in these technologies. And this is probably more of a benign way and less threatening to the average person than the thought of having drones landing in their backyard and things like that. So I really love the way that it introduces a topic. And what the article is about is Lawson's, which you say 7-Eleven. I'm on the northeast coast. We would call it a Wawa. So I don't know.
That's right. Best hoagies.
Mm-hmm.
I know, right? I read this. I was like, oh wow, I'd love to have an avatar in my Wawa. Essentially, the company, I think it was the last week of November, opened up their first convenience store with avatar-assisted shopping experience. And so what I really loved about it is, either at your checkout or somewhere, along the aisles, in your shopping experience, there's a way to interact with, computer-generated avatar. I'm assuming it's on a screen. Like, I don't know if you saw it when you were there or Kimberly, but I'm assuming right now it's, sort of on a screen, kind of like how we're interacting right now. But they have an avatar, it's either male or female, but behind it is a real person. So they can answer your questions and assist you through the process. And I think that's great. I love the concept. The whole idea behind this and some other elements that they're doing is to promote carbon neutrality in their businesses for people that maybe have mobility issues, or this way they have greater access to employees. They can work from home and just be helping people, in the store. I think that's fantastic. It also brought me down the line. Well, this certainly is a great avenue for people with disabilities that might not be able to physically work in the store, but they certainly can help in be an employee in a manner in this way. I just think it's a great idea. I would love to be able to experience it. And just ironically, what happened to me yesterday, I kept thinking, oh my gosh, if only they had avatars. I went to Home Depot because I needed to buy a garbage disposal because, of course, mine exploded somehow. A whole other drama. But what should have probably been a 5 or 10 minute Home Depot trip for me, I was in the store for almost an hour. Why? Because I didn't know which of their 50 aisles garbage disposals are in, number one. Number two, when I got to it, I don't know anything about garbage disposals, and so I had questions like, well, how much horsepower do I need? Like, there's all these, there's 1/3, 1/2. Well, I'm like, what? I don't know,
And how many garbage disposal experts can you staff in every location?
Well, and to
Right.
find somebody working in Home Depot. I mean, I like Home Depot, don't get me wrong. But I'm with you, Karen. Like every time I go there, it's at least an hour, not just because it's so huge, but because when I need to find somebody, I have to walk probably 50 of those 50 aisles to find someone to help me. And then to Mike's point, they don't know that they're not the garbage disposal guy or gal. Like
Right.
they're like, the wood person, so it's just like, okay, great.
But if the person behind the avatar there maybe doesn't, they're not going to be an expert on every product, but then they could easily,
Look it up
online or like do whatever they're going to do. And I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, I wish Home Depot should absolutely adopt this because it would be perfect. Of course, there would be a lot less of me wandering down aisles and buying 10 things that, I didn't necessarily want to, but from a consumer experience.
Satisfaction,
Yeah, but really, it was so frustrating. And, it was Sunday. I was like, I need to go home and read my articles, But anyway, I think it's really fascinating. And that's just one element of what they're doing there. And, they're also, offering more frozen foods versus refrigerated foods. And, they're really trying to think behind some of the growing issues we have as a world today from supply chain and, carbon emissions and things like that. But the reason I really liked it too, not only can it relate to my everyday life, like Home Depot, but also, what I do for a living, right? So trying to advance the drone industry. One of the things that we're building, a lot of companies are building what we call remote operation control centers, right? So they'll have sort of a command and control center, and I call them ROCs, ROCCs, remote operation control centers. And, from there, whether they're doing delivery or inspection or whatever their use case is, their operators and sometimes their analysts are centrally located at whatever their headquarters, and they're, flying drones all over the country. That'll get even more ubiquitous when we get beyond visual line of sight rulemaking, but they can still do this today. They can still control the drone as long as there's a pilot or an observer on site. So, the natural progression would be to that. That's what will get these kind of companies at scale. But I kept thinking to myself, because, one of my companies is that I work with does healthcare delivery, right? So they move goods from from hospitals to rural clinics and, serving communities out there. And one of the challenges that we've talked about, with our operations control center, yes, of course, they can, I think we can figure out how to pilot the aircraft, but then sometimes the people on the other end, when we aren't going to have anybody over there, we'll need some special knowledge that maybe only, the drone company will have. Like if they have a problem unlatching, a delivery box, or if there's some kind of anomaly and, a drone parachutes, like, well, how do we get the drone? Where do we store it? But if, they could have Avatar on the other end, helping out, or emergency as needed. Also emergency operations, right? We dispatch drones for that. And, sometimes you're talking to a firefighter or a, law enforcement, and, drones arrive on the scene and nobody knows what to do. But if they have a way to do that, it was started my mind racing about, oh, this is really cool. We could use it a lot of ways in a lot of different technology.
I would love to hear Kimberly's thoughts, because I feel like in a way some of this is cultural too. Like I don't know that an anime avatar like that might be super popular in Japan would fly. No pun intended. Fly.
It's like
I don't know, like
YouTuber
in Sweden
gone.
or the Netherlands. Yeah, I'd like to hear Kimberly's thoughts.
Yeah, good question. I think actually in Sweden they have a couple of these stores that are completely personalless. They don't even have anybody working there, so you can just kind of check out. Or
Wow.
I guess like in Amazon at one point they had these, like you just go in, you just grab your stuff and you go out, and you don't even see any human connection whatsoever. So I think the trend is more going towards that size. And also I like Lawson's. It's a really tiny store. Those are really tiny stores. So I actually find it more logical to have a completely personless solution there. Maybe one person just to kind of check if everybody's not stealing stealing out of the lawsuits though. And I guess like in this case, because in Japan, they're very afraid of letting go of people, let's say, in terms of like, getting rid of jobs that are not really necessary anymore. I don't know, Mike, when we came into Narita Airport, how many people reminded us to show our QR code when we came in, right?
Yes, well, my favorite part was going through security, and one person checks your vaccination status, then they give you a blue piece of paper, and you turn around, and you don't even get a chance to take a step, and somebody's like, "Oh, thank you," and taking that piece of paper and then allowing you to walk through. So yes, they do not make people redundant on the same level. If there's like a divot in the street, there's like two crossing walk guys rather than a wooden horse actually directing
Or instead
people.
of a sign, just pointing to a direction. They have a person pointing towards the direction.
Yeah,
But I think definitely.
I like that though. To be honest,
Yes, that's
it's
true.
more welcoming than this dehumanized space. I would say so. Maybe there's something to that. I mean, one of my
Yeah.
frustrations with a lot of the tech we built is it works in favor of the corporation, but doesn't actually has to subtract something from my customer experience in the process. Whereas this actually works for everybody, except there will be some redundancies made for employees because now you could have a single employee work at 4 to 5 stores. So if things are going to evolve, I think that's actually a happier medium. I don't know. That's just personal feelings interjected, but some of this is cultural. But
Yeah.
what Dawn was saying about an anime avatar, VTubers are all over Twitch right now. That might be generational too. So
Yeah,
this
I've got
is
a
just
son that
motion
like
capture
loves.
technology,
Yeah, my son loves anime. I mean, he's so into it.
Yeah.
Old people like us, I don't know. I mean, I could take her or leave it. Honestly, if I'm in Home Depot, I don't really care what the thing looks like as long as it's giving me the information I need and I don't have to walk 50 aisles and hunt it down.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
for the brand, it allows them to keep branding, right?
Yeah.
So like, and you could add a voice changer on top of that employee, and now everything is Siri level brand consistency from store to store. So
Yeah, like
I think
somebody in
there might be
overalls.
something there. Yeah.
Yeah, although you kind of miss that personal feeling, like, right? So like I read and thought like something somewhere that like sometimes the small interactions you have with individual people with different personalities or different looks can actually kind of brighten your day if you go to the store and you see the person, hey, I know you, let's have a conversation. And I think also one of my experience in Japan was a while ago when I was there again, and then I want to go to Tsukiji Market, which is the big tuna market in Tokyo. But you have to be there at 3 a.m. in the morning. There was no train, so I decided to walk. So I was 40 minutes walking through the center of Tokyo. And then actually, even though Tokyo is the most safest cities in the world, it's still nice that every once in a while you can just drop into one of the lots and actually see a human being. And if you're being followed, that you can at least, just stick around with a human being there. So
Well, that's a good
In that
point,
sense.
actually.
yeah. And that is actually something that happens quite often in Japan. But I would say that like this technology could be very useful. But I'm not sure about Lawson, but definitely in different stores or business situations though.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's a happy medium too, right? So some of the fully autonomous stores where you can't ask like complicated questions. There's almost like you have your own personal shopper with you. It seems like, not the human form, but the animated form of it. I think it's it leaves the human in the loop. But if we're moving towards autonomous, at least there's still that human in the loop piece of it, because we are losing that connection through all these.
No, I totally agree. It terms so like dating is no more efficient if you use an app, for example, and we could see the statistics of how long people are staying together. So, yeah, there's something to human connection that hasn't fully been replaced by technology, but I think there are, a lot of it is just the technology is inferior to the way that we're used to interacting with humans. So like this motion capture stuff, like the crappier avatars, you still feel that sense of uncanny valley. But when things get to like Gollum level or avatar level in real time, being able to mimic the way that a human face was captured for those emotions, I think suddenly that changes a little bit. Especially if you put these emotions on a dog, and then we'll all love it, right? Or a cat, if
Yeah,
you're a
for
cat person.
sure.
All right, we gotta move on to thanking our sponsors. We would like to thank Akin Gump Drone Rescue Systems. We added Skydio last week, and who else? We have Airspace Link, right? So thank you so much to our sponsors for making this show happen. We appreciate the work you've done, and we've had most of you on our Full Tilt podcast, so take a look at the great leaders from these amazing companies. Last week we had Brendan Groves from Skydio, and I've met him before, and Brendan's an awesome person. It was really, really cool to hear his backstory, because I think you'll learn a lot about, what it means to be a professional, what it means to make a case for yourself and what you believe in. So go check out that episode. So next up, perfect kind of segue, because Brendan did talk about national security a little bit and how that influenced his life. So what's going on, Don, with autonomous vehicles?
Yeah, I know there's going to be haters out there, so I'm just it's okay, because we've seen this in the drone space, and now what we're doing is seeing it in, no shock, the autonomous vehicle space, where you've got congressman, in this case a Republican from Texas, Representative August Pfluger, who's kind of throwing down the gauntlet and saying, hey, he sent a letter to the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, that governs these vehicles on the road, basically raising a lot of questions like, what are you doing to vet risk of Chinese vehicles collecting critical data on our infrastructure, on U.S. citizens, and sending it back to the CCP? And so basically threw that out there. Again, calling it like the Chinese technology, the Trojan horse. We've seen a lot of movement in this space recently. And by the way, this is a Republican, but generally speaking, these issues on China are bipartisan in this country, which for anybody following U.S. politics, that is pretty significant for the vitriol on both sides of the aisle, and then the lock arms on any particular issue. You should be taking note. And we've seen it in the drone space with some of the prohibitions on Chinese drones. We've seen it on 5G. FCC just put out last week a notice of public rulemaking that deals with Huawei in particular, and some of this Chinese infrastructure. And now we're seeing, kind of shots being fired over the bow from Congress to the regulator. Like, what are you doing about these autonomous vehicles? Why do you care? What's it collecting? Okay. People out there will say, oh, what's the big deal? Google and other satellites are collecting all kinds of information every single day. Anybody can access it. Well, it's different. And anybody in this space, and Karen, with her clients in particular, I'm sure Kimberly, being an engineer, can appreciate that the more perspectives you get, the more data you can collect, the better, right? When you're trying to figure something out. So a satellite image from Google, amazing. Okay, now let's put a sensor on a car. Let's take Tesla as an example. What is Tesla grabbing about your life when you're driving one of those cars? It's grabbing where it was charged, the current location of the vehicle, where it usually parks, when it was driving, the speed of the trips, navigation requests, history of software updates, history of weather around the vehicle. It can access your phone if you connect your Bluetooth, who you're calling. So, I mean, the list goes on and on and on when you're talking about network systems. And kind of like an Internet of Things is what we're talking about here. And any little piece of data, when combined with other data, especially when you're doing a ginormous data grab, can be relevant, including around critical infrastructure. And one last comment, and then I'm going to send it off to everybody else to comment, because I'm sure everybody's got thoughts. Let's put it this way. If it's not a concern, then why did China ban the use of Teslas recently around their critical infrastructure? And they had a big kind of powwow of CCP leaders. No Teslas were able to drive within a certain area. So that tells you something right there. If it's not a concern, then why is China doing it, right? What's good for the goose, possibly good for the gander. So I'll stop talking now, and I'd love to hear. Let's just go in alphabetical order. We'll go Karen first.
Oh, so much to unpack here. You know, right now, like 2/3 of the world, something close to 2/3 of the world is connected to the internet. And then, you know, as we move towards 5G and we have all these low orbiting satellite constellations coming online, you know, the other third of the world is going to be connected too. And then we're going to have this massive sort of, you know, surge in the economy and in innovation. And I think what we're seeing now is just, again, the beginning of that. But along with all that cool stuff that's going to happen that we can't even imagine right now, there's going to be nefarious actors and concerns that go along with it hand in hand. As we've seen in all the technologies we've talked about today, you know, the innovation is always outpacing the policy. So the fact that congressmen are calling on, you know, the National Highway and Transportation, I forget what it's called.
Traffic, yeah.
Yeah.
Traffic
So,
safety.
Traffic Safety Administration, that's never been their job to worry about, you know, security and privacy, and they're not equipped to do it, and it's not their current mission. It's the same kind of thing that we hear from the FAA and the drone world. You know, their mission is safety. You want, you know, to use counter UAS and all these things, but, you know, privacy is not in our lane, you know, as a federal agency, and security is not in our lane. And so, you know, for a while they were just like, you know, pointing fingers like this, and those agencies need to come together. The agencies aren't equipped to handle it. I'm sure they said, oh, we don't know. We've never had to deal with this before. So, you know, as we have all these connected electronics that have the potential, in this case, like the connotation is that they have the potential to be spies, not only, you know, in our simulated life, like on TikTok, the article brings up, they're collecting all that data, you know, so are all the other apps, but also now in our physical world, on American soil, and then in our own homes, right? So, you know, it's not a problem until it becomes a problem. And, you know, when we figure out why do they want that information, what are they doing or going to do with it? That's the really, you know, scary part of that. And it just makes me go back to the role of the regulators and the role of federal government in all of this, because, I mean, this is a huge national security concern. If they're not allowing it in their country, then, you know, why should we be allowing it here? And so that came out in the drone space, Dawn, right? So, you know, the NDAA, the National
Defense Authorization Act, yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot of discussion about, you know, banning, you know, certain drones and Chinese drones, and now there's a little backtracking on that. We're not really sure where it's going, but I'm actually glad that, you know, it's coming out and that there's discussion about it, because, you know, it's a huge challenge. And we need to fix things in the government to be able to handle this. And, you know, they might need new skill sets. But also, you know, we have responsibilities as the commercial side, as the innovators, and things like that, to make sure that we're super responsible as this world continues to evolve. And a lot of it's moral, a lot of it's cultural that we've already discussed, but sometimes it, you know, just boils down to, you know, laws and regulations. So it's going to get really interesting. I don't really have an answer. It was one of those things that made me want to start like searching on my phone for puppies and kittens, because you know, it takes you to a place that's not necessarily that pleasant when you start to think about all the bad things that can happen with, you know, the exciting advancements that we have as humanity.
Kimberly, are you seeing these kind of concerns in Europe? I know, like, a lot of Chinese companies, as I think in the aviation space, like EHang is very much kind of penetrating the European market for advanced air mobility, things like this. Or, you know, are you hearing similar concerns on your side of the pond?
Yeah, well, actually, yeah, in Europe, I think there's very strict regulation about data sending and privacy of sending data from people to outside of to any country in the European Union. I think even Facebook got a pretty bad lawsuit on Google for actually sending personal information to the US servers. So yeah, we're definitely very much aware of it. But in terms of like they mentioned in the article also Huawei. who wanted to set up like a 5G network in the US. In a lot of European countries also blocked Huawei to do that for probably the same reason. I have an automatic vacuum cleaner, the Roborock, which is actually from Xiaomi, and I'm been wondering, should I connect it to my Wi-Fi? Do they have my access to my apartment now? But yeah, it's very convenient. In that sense, it's a very handy product. You have that with TikTok now. Currently, it's a very new news that they're now allowing to send information to China as well. So it's difficult to say, because like in the sense of like maybe the current atmosphere and the other measurements that both the European Union and the US has taken, it makes sense that they would not allow these kinds of things. But it also kind of makes me a little bit sad, because especially like in robotics development, you would like to have collaboration over countries, like what they have with the space agencies. Although that's like let's see how long that will last.
Yeah, that's with the Russia-Ukraine situation, that's kind of unraveling, at least over there.
Yeah, I'm even surprised that they even considered going to collaborate there, but they still are. And also going to Roscon at Kyoto, just like people from all over the world, just like talking so openly together about robotics, sharing their passion, and this will kind of prevent that kind of from happening. So that it's perhaps necessary from a regulation point of view or safety point of view, but it's just to kind of advance robotic technology of not collaborating together, that is a kind of it's a bad thing. And also if you're not sharing information of like Tesla's, how people in China drive a car, for instance, or if that they don't have data of how American drive their car, then they have probably a product that's only tailored towards like one group in the world. So it's also makes it less generic and perhaps less safe if at one point they're allowed to put their cars back on the roads again. Then I already see a difference between people driving their car in the Netherlands and Sweden. It's a huge difference.
Yes.
So those are kind of my immediate thoughts about it. Like, it's I get it, but it makes me sad. That's my summary.
If I could provide some, I think, nuance to the issue, I think sometimes we focus too much on the geopolitical side of it when a solution can be more localized. What checks and balances for devices and that are imported so that they're unable to phone home, and if they're unable to phone home, or if they need to acquire data to improve the product, then that data has to be stored within the country that it's being analyzed in. I feel like there are solutions to this, and that we're not addressing those solutions. I just want to bring up two comments for Carolina Airshot. So he said, he or she said, the only drone in backyard is mine, and the government is the biggest threat to national security. So that's one opinion, but I can take somewhere in the middle, actually, a little bit, where if we were to focus more on securing the individual data, which is something actually Europe has done in a lot of these cases, then some of these problems kind of go away. Because if the data is not open to any state actor, then it's not open for manipulation by a state. So I think some of the feet dragging with the United States is the real reason that China banned these products. Is even if we do have a great system of law in the United States that would require requests to be made to a private company to actually secure the data of a private person, it's still a possibility, even though that's much easier in China for sure. There wouldn't be as many steps and authorizations in the process. You could understand why China booted us, and actually prior booted Google and Facebook, right? So it might actually be that certain types of data, like social media apps or these cars, I don't know. I wouldn't be the one that would want to make the determination. Just actually are not securable. I think with Huawei, that case was clear. I don't think I need to be an expert to know that if they control the entire communication network that they could backdoor too easily. So that made immediate sense that you wouldn't want them in the United States. So that's kind of just stuff that I've been thinking about on this issue, and the reason I think about it so hard is like what Kim said. I don't want to give up on the vision of the future that 2010 A Space Odyssey laid out, where the Russians and the United States finally realized that scientific progress is what's important for bringing humanity forward, and that our minor differences are stuff that we should be able to put aside to end all conflict. Sorry if that's too optimistic, but I think we should strive towards it.
I love it.
I love that, Mike, and I would love a perfect world as well. I just think the reality is, it has a quote from FBI Director Christopher Wray in this particular article, that China has stolen more data from the United States than all of the nations combined through, quote, increasingly sophisticated large-scale cyber espionage operations against a range of industries, organizations, and dissidents in the U.S. And one of the examples they gave is this summer, a former Apple engineer pleaded guilty to stealing trade secrets, or back to IP, where we started this show, on the company's autonomous vehicle program, and sending them back to China. So if you're just watching the national security kind of law docket at all, the court docket, pretty routinely, they're, in a way, it's good, they're finding them and prosecuting them, but you're seeing these criminal cases for espionage, sadly, almost too routinely.
Yeah, I think we're gonna... Go ahead.
No, finish off, Karen, and then we got to move on to the fun stuff.
Yeah, I was just gonna say one thought. I think, we're gonna see this topic come up more and more as we get closer to another presidential election in the United States. Because a lot of this concern comes around, the shaping of our political space, and how Facebook and some of the other apps were used or allegedly used to radicalize people and things like that. So, I think it's really interesting. I think it needs to be studied, but I'm with you. We can't give up on the science and collaborating on the future together, because there will always be nefarious actors, and there's always going to be espionage. We're just going to have to figure out new ways to come together. We're all going to be connected, so we're going to have to figure out.
Right, and corporate to corporate theft is different than nation state to corporate theft, so I think that's also part of the consideration, right? So finally, we're going to be talking about kind of a groundbreaking AI chat tool. Sometimes I've used it quite a bit. I actually debate how groundbreaking it is, but it definitely, it's in terms of utility, I feel like it's groundbreaking. So OpenAI's new chatbot, GPT, could be a game changer for business. The article is one thing, but I actually kind of just want to show off the tool. So I've brought a live demo here. Hold on, I've got to click. There you go. Essentially, what this tool allows you to do is ask it any question in natural language, and it will provide an answer. It also has the ability to kind of mix and match information to create, let's say, new text. And it's also really good at helping people code, because you can ask it a general question about things, or set up a basic system in words, and then ask it to give you the code in C# for Unity, or Python to run a script, or if you need it to work on a website, you could say, give me the JavaScript for this, and it'll produce it. So let's do something fun first, and let's say name 5 Revolutionary War generals. Did it submit? No, there you go. So now it's gonna, call its general database to figure out what were some Revolutionary War generals. I didn't specify American, so it might give us some people out of America, which is fine. Actually, so this is interesting. Showing some bias in the data set, it produced American war generals. So this is, I think, actually very illustrative of where AIs can fail, and how this isn't exactly at the level of a Google index yet, but it can produce kind of novel results. So let's say cast them in a movie about a bank heist, and it'll do that, which is something that is completely novel that Google wouldn't be able to do. So this does actually now become a creative assistant.
So cool.
So just to read off some of the things: George Washington, the leader, the mastermind of the bank heist; Nathaniel Green, the getaway driver responsible for the smooth escape; Henry Knox, the muscle. So actually, just to go one more step further, write a scene that's darkly humorous with these characters.
And Mike, it's building on your initial query this whole time because it's one thread. Is that what it's doing? That's why it knows what to build a darkly humorous scene from?
Yes, exactly. So actually, when I'm sending it the second time, you could even see the code up here. It's going to show the entire prompt from top to bottom. Actually, I don't want to move this. There we go. So it's reevaluating the entire context of the conversation as a single prompt, which I thought was interesting and almost more reductive than I would have imagined.
I'm not
but
sure
it's
you're gonna be
very
able to
simple.
read this whole scene to us here, Mike.
But anyway, I mean, look, it produced it. So
It did. This is so cool.
Yeah. So just looking at it, it looks like one of the characters drops their hat as they're trying to run away. So that's very imaginative, or what we would say is imaginative. But what it's really doing is just saying, all right, here are all these scripts for bank heists. They share these common elements in common. We're just replacing some of the characters. So if you guys want to ask it a question, let's give it a shot.
Hey, before we have them ask a question, I'd love Kimberly to maybe explain it a little more. I understand, Kimberly, you use this. This is right now, I guess maybe let's call it, is it beta or something? They're going to have the OpenAI access early next year. But
Yeah,
you
or
use
some
this
kind of some kind of research edition or something that people can try it. Like, yeah,
Gotcha.
beta. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I am actually familiar with this. I also saw it some like on social media and LinkedIn, and it's like, okay, interesting. And then I actually started with, I don't know if you're familiar with something called the Advent of Code. That's actually it's a website that's kind of like releases in small programming problem that you can solve on each day. So I took it upon myself to learn a new programming language called Rust. And actually, usually when I program, I Stack Overflow program. Like, I don't really learn from scratch. I just want to get something working. So I'll just like try to figure out every step on the way based on my previous experiences. And yeah, usually that is just a real pain to really go through. It's like, you have to go through all these Stack Overflow forums. You have all these kind of dodgy websites that give these guides that then suddenly you go on there and they have all kinds of pop-ups. So I actually started using for like the easy questions, at least, or like the easy for each part that I want to solve in this programming thing. Like, okay, how do I make, for instance, a set in Rust? How do you do that? And then you get this very nice explanation of how you could do that with, like, background information, and it's like, whoa, my Stack Overflow Googling days for programming days are over. I do have to say that a colleague of mine said that, like, if you go very far, there might be even things like talking back to bias that it gets wrong. So it tries to kind of, I guess, interpolate with the knowledge it knows, and sometimes it gives functions that seems very logical, but actually doesn't exist in the language. So that is simply the things that you have to be careful with. But it's I feel I'm not the best programming myself. I've used it a lot in my life, but I just get things to work, and I think this might be also a very nice tool to kind of enhance, my programming skills, in the sense that I can still navigate between different languages and not that much, how do you call it, held back by it anymore. So
Yeah.
Mike, you got a lot of stuff going on there on the screen. I'm curious what is happening right now.
Yeah, so I asked it to show me the code to get started with a drone. It produced some code. It's generic code. It probably wouldn't work, actually. But I've done this earlier. I have previous ones with actual Bitcraze. Let's go down here. Yep. So uh, I said I want to get started coding for a Bitcraze drone. Where do I go? So it gives me the information. Then I said, show me some getting started code. I'm assuming it pulled it. And then explain this code, does line by line sarcastically with dark humor. I also tried to have it do it in Japanese, and it did it. So
Oh my
um,
gosh.
you can
Oh wow. It
or
didn't get
explain
everything
like a
right though,
second
but
grader.
it's
Yeah, it didn't. Yeah, well,
no, there are a couple of mistakes in there, but it's still like I'm still pretty impressed. This is very yeah.
I want to get Karen's thoughts, but Mike, could you just explain the significance of this and how this is different than like the chat bots or the avatar stuff we talked about, or like why they're saying, hey, this could replace Google and its algorithm. Like, explain why. Like, what is the significance of this? Why is this a big deal?
Well, I'll start actually with Kim's example because I lived through it too, which was so like if I wanted to connect different APIs for email marketing like we do, right? So like I want to take the information that comes into our Airtable and turn it into an email, an HTML email with another service, so that I no longer have to compose the email on Monday morning in a rush. Um, that's doable. It's not hard. I've done this dozens of times in my life, but the nuances of each API can be frustrating, and you're like, wait, why would you call it that? That doesn't make sense. Where I just asked this thing, like, how to how to connect the Twitch TMI API to influence a game asset. It produced the code that took me a month and a half to learn, and it was functional. So even if it gets you 95% of there and like something's off, you could still troubleshoot it, and get to brass tacks really really fast with this. Where the other thing is, when I ask for the answer to a question on Google, Google has so much bias baked in based on how it wants to serve the ads, how it wants to circumvent other services like IMDb, Yelp, try to provide you different answers. The basically you could just get to an answer much faster because there's not as much crap on top of this also. So honestly, just being able to get to the answer that I was actually looking for much faster is awesome. If they could add attribution, which I know they don't want to, I think they don't want to for legal reasons, but it would actually make researching much easier too. So that's why I think it's significant. So Karen, what are your thoughts?
So many. I think it's so cool. The first thing I was going to ask it to write is BVLOS regulations for the drone industry, so we don't have to wait 3 years on the FAA in the U.S. But, wonder what that could come up with, and put some humor in it. I love the creativity part, Mike. Actually, I think I have a question instead of a comment, Mike. Like, because I have not used this at all, and it was really fascinating to me when I got your article. Now you're sharing it with us. Could it help in the healthcare industry for? I mean, every time I have symptoms, I'm always trying to Google it, be my own MD on Google, and to get myself that I have 6 brain tumors because I bumped my toe or something. But can can this be used in sort of any area? What's its specialty? Because code is one thing, right? Like, I get that that's really cool, but could it be used in other realms?
Well, right now it's more generalized than it would need to be for the purpose you were talking about. But you could tune the model, so that's part of what it will be open to. So we're gonna try and tune the model for drone code so that when, at least this is an idea I have. I don't know if we'll ever get to it. So that we can actually help people as they're learning PX4 to get started. Or if they're trying to troubleshoot bugs, they can figure it out. But the same thing would apply in a medical scenario where you're saying, this is a very, very narrow domain of knowledge. We want the patient to tell us what their symptoms are. We could ask additional questions that are based on the input they've given so far, and then we could send that information to a medical professional with some places to look, if not already tell the patient or potential patient, you need to come in because we would like to check X or Y. And give them also the disclaimer of we cannot verify that information yet, but this is some stuff that you can do to prepare for your visit. So basically replacing what would have been your friendly doctor around the corner, which, if we have to admit, has completely gone away as the healthcare system has grown in scale and become very systematized. You could actually re-inject some personal care, bedside manner in with this type of technology. We're coming up on time, so last statements, one sentence each. We'll roll around, and then we got to close out shop. Start with Kim.
Oh yeah. Yeah, thanks for having me here. So like it was very, very interesting discussions. Also kind of like the nice, yeah, different views of like, you know, how to look at a certain problem. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, and I echo that. I think this was the most fun I've had on a Monday morning in a really long time. I just love it. This was a really great way to have some discussion and all of our different interests, and just, it's fascinating. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me, and love to come back any other time. This was so fun.
Yeah, happy
Well,
to
we'd
have
love
you
to
both.
have you. And Mike, if you don't mind, I'm going to give you the last word. I have to say, Mike, for one, for the first time ever, is outnumbered. This is, I think, the first time we've had two female guests on the same show. And I love that we have these incredible kick-ass women in the industry. So thank you. Thank you for repping.
Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing your opinions and sharing great articles. Like I was typing our mutual friend Ramon, like this is going to be a good one because I was really proud of the guest lineup and what you guys selected. We've got some awesome stuff coming up for the holidays. I'm going to let Dawn kind of take us out with everything that's coming up in the next week or so.
Yeah, so tomorrow at 9 a.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Eastern, we've got a special broadcast with Modal AI. You learn all about their Voxel 2 autopilot with CEO Chad Sweet. They are a Blue UAS, so check that out. Wednesday on the Dawn of Drones, same time, 9 a.m. Mountain, 11 Eastern. We have Tom Fury from Sage Tech Avionics kicking off our Best of 2022 month. And then Thursday on Clubhouse, 11 a.m. Mountain, 1 p.m. Eastern, we've got John Eberhardt from ATA LLC. He is doing incredible things with unmanned or uncrewed aircraft system traffic management and as a supplementary data service provider. So check all of that out. It's going to be a great week.
Yep, happy to have John on again. He was great last year, and it's gonna be a fun couple weeks rolling into the holidays. So stay tuned. And just want to thank our audience for participating today. Thank you, Ramon and Carolina Airshots. We do welcome all opinions and perspectives, so thank you for supporting the show and tuning in. We want to thank our sponsors, Akin Gump, Skydio, Airspace, Link, and Drone Rescue Systems. Everything you've done has helped build this show, and I'd also want to thank our guests one last time for an amazing episode, and I could think of no better way to spend a Monday morning, which is why I do that. So that is all for this week. We are out here.